Hello, I'm Eric Freeland, and we'll be going over our market analysis summary for our discussion 3 post, and we'll get into it. So, in doing this, we're going to be looking at 4 different aircrafts, 2 turboprops, 2 jets. I decided to go with our turboprops here. We have the TBM 930, which is a single engine, and our King Air 350i, which is a multi engine. Um, the main thing I went with this is that we have a big separation between, things like maintenance overhauls, um, the size that engine can carry is a lot different. So if you want to look on the back end of stuff, the single engine might be the cheaper option, whereas you're sacrificing some of your payload, and then your twin engine, it's going to cost more on the back end with maintenance and fixing stuff and overhauls. But you'll be able to carry more weight depending on what you're trying to do and how many people you're trying to consistently carry. But we have the King Air 350i, which is our multi-engine there on the left. It starts out at a little over $7 million. It does have one required pilot, just like the TBM does. However, it seats 9 additional people on top of the pilot, whereas the TBM only can hold 5 more. The range is about the same on both of them. It's for the King Air, it's 1,560 nautical miles, whereas in the TBM, it's 1,514 nautical miles. And then the true airspeed they both have aren't very far off, surprisingly, considering that they are a single engine versus a multi-engine. But the King Air is a little bit slower because it's a bigger airplane, weighs a lot more than the TBM does. So its true airspeed that it will cap out at is 312 knots, whereas the TBM is 330 knots. But with this comes that big payload difference. Whereas you've got the TBM that only has, if you go full fuel, can only carry additional 584 pounds, which is a big thing to consider when you're talking about, if you're seating all 6 people inside that plane. At full fuel, they can only add up to 584 pounds. If not, and you're over that, you're going to need to take some of that fuel out. You're going to sacrifice range and stuff like that. Whereas with your King Air, it has basically an extra 1,000 pounds of capacity it can carry, that'll really be able to hold the weight of all of the executives and stuff like that, that you're trying to carry your equipment, stuff like that. It can, hold all of it with ease. And then with the jets, I went with the Citation Latitude and the Phenom 300. Phenom wasn't exactly a entry level jet, but it was more of the advanced beginner, I would say, from the list that we have. Whereas the Citation is kind of further up there on that list. And it has a pretty big price difference. However, there are a few major benefits to it that it has that the Phenom doesn't have, and that's really the range that that is able to go. So our Phenom 300, we start out at almost $19.5 million, whereas our Citation is up to 16,650,000. So it's up there a good bit. Another big difference that we have here is the Phenom 300 is a single pilot, so you only have to pay for one pilot. Citation, you have to have 2 in order to fly that aircraft. So that's another thing to keep in mind. The Citation seats 9 additional. The Phenom seats 7. The range is that big number. You have a 2,731 nautical mile range in the Citation, whereas your Phenom has 1,985 nautical miles. So it's up there a pretty good bit. You can go a lot of different places at 2,700 nautical mile range. The top speed on the Phenom being a little bit smaller is a little higher at 440 knots true airspeed, whereas the Citation is 432. But then the surprising factor is, for me at least, the Phenom, being the smaller aircraft, actually has a bigger payload capacity when it's full of fuel at 1,561 pounds. So it's almost comparable to the King Air. whereas the Citation only has 1,000 pounds. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And then this right here is just a really big breakdown of the value factor, the maintenance cost, insurance, crew salaries, cruise training, your hangar fees, and other service fees you're going to have, how much it'd be per hour for 300 nautical mile trips, 600 nautical mile trips, as well as 1,000 nautical mile trips, what that hourly breakdown is. It also covers your max altitudes that you can have with the different aircrafts. And then lastly, the big numbers we see here is the total fixed cost we have with it. As you can see, the TBM 930 is the cheapest one that we can utilize. So it also can't go as high though, as far as getting those jet streams to kind of really speed up your trips on if you got some really good favorable winds up there. Is really the only downside I really see to it, especially if you're starting out new. Want to get in for the first time, TBM price-wise is really good to sit at. And then it kind of stays in the middle of the road with the King Air and the Phenom 300. They're kind of really in the same ballpark. And then once you jump up to the Citation Latitude, you see that you really get up there in the final cost. It skyrockets, and in some cases it doubles and more than doubles what the other three are going to cost you. But that also comes with how far you need to go, if you don't want to make stops along the way, things of that nature. It's all things that you're going to have to consider and weigh your options when doing so. But anyways, that's my presentation, and thanks.